Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. They say you can judge a man by the company he keeps. Well, if that's true, my guest today should provide telling insights into the character of President Donald Trump. Roger Stone is a hugely controversial and divisive figure in American conservatism. He is a longtime friend and sometime advisor to Mr. Trump. But is he also a symbol of all that's currently wrong in American politics? Roger Stone, welcome to Hard Talk.
Delighted to be here.
We've just passed the one-year anniversary of the Trump administration. How would you describe the political atmosphere in the United States today?
I would say improving. The president continues to be a polarizing figure. He came out of a relatively close election where both candidates were exceedingly polarizing. But the rising tide of a stronger economy, I think, is helping him enormously. We have created, under Trump's watch, 2 million new jobs. We have a record stock market. African American and Hispanic unemployment at historic lows. Overall unemployment is extraordinarily low. Suddenly, you have these billion-dollar companies like Apple coming back to the United States to repatriate money there, to expand there. So I'm growingly optimistic about the president's political position as well as the stature of the country.
But all the more remarkable then, if we take your view of a buzzing economy seriously, all the more remarkable that President Trump's approval ratings are at historic lows. Great economy, and yet a president who is profoundly unpopular with the American public.
I would argue that he's polarizing rather than unpopular.
But you've seen the figures just as I have.
I have. I quibble with some of them. Obviously, there are methodology questions and other questions. Let us also recollect that virtually every poll showed that he couldn't possibly win the election, the same pollsters. And in the first year of your presidency, I don't think you can judge his overall success. I think as the economy grows, as he gets more of his program in place, particularly after his historic tax cut cuts in and has some traction, that his approval ratings will go up.
What about the sort of more intangible political culture? We have the extraordinary sight of a president who, according to independent fact checkers, has, in the course of his first year in office, delivered pretty much 2,000 false or misleading statements.
If you like your health care program, you can keep your health care program. Read my lips, no new taxes. No president has told the people the exact truth. The president has never said anything he didn't believe to be true.
But these are untruths on a scale we've never seen before. Would you accept that?
No, not necessarily. I think every politician has a tendency to prevaricate. But we just had the election. These questions were all out there as arguments against his election, and he won anyway. His opponent didn't have a great track record for telling the truth either.
I wonder if one can say to a certain extent that this style of politics is something that you imbued in the president. You've been close to Donald Trump for an awful long time. You're a friend, you were a political ally, and for a time you were a very senior advisor running up to 2015 when he actually had decided he was going to run for president. There are people who believe that your attitude to quote-unquote disinformation, which you've been very explicit about, the value and power of disinformation, is something that you passed on to Donald Trump.
First of all, nobody imbues Donald Trump with anything. There's no Karl Rove in Trump world. He marches to his own drummer. He is his own wordsmith. He is his own tweet master. He is his own strategist. He is his own speechwriter. He is his own press secretary. He is the chief architect of his own success in an extraordinarily improbable election as President of the United States.
But here's something you said, sorry to interrupt, but here's something you said that it seems to me Trump may well have picked up on. You said, I believe in doing anything necessary to win then you added short of breaking the law.
Yeah,
but
I actually lifted that quote from Lyndon Baines Johnson, who says it in his biography. What I mean by that is you leave no stone unturned. You don't stop campaigning on Election Day, as George Bush once famously did in the New Hampshire primary, which probably cost him. So the implication there is that you make an all-out effort. You spend yourself totally, short of breaking the law. It has to do with effort, not with
And of
tactic.
course, lying isn't illegal, so lying is fair game.
Well, you don't go out and lie purposely. Sometimes
Well,
you
yeah,
end up
but
saying
hang
things
on,
that prove
Donald Trump-
not to be true.
Donald Trump does go out and lie purposefully. We both know that. You can talk about very literal things, size of crowds and things like that, which there is evidence to show that he must know it cannot be true.
Evidently, the voters have taken that with a grain of salt because they elected him.
Absolutely. I'm saying that your view of politics is it's not about words like values, principles, conscience. It's about doing whatever is necessary. It seems to me that's a political culture that you believe in, that Donald Trump believes in too, and perhaps the two things are associated because you've known him and worked with him for an awful long time.
I think it's a political culture that every successful president in modern time has subscribed to. I don't think Donald Trump or I have done anything different than has been the norm.
Here's a quote for you from I know you know him, you may not respect him very much, but a writer who's looked both at your career and Donald Trump's, Jeffrey Toobin.
Yes.
And he says, in many ways, Roger Stone created Donald Trump as a political figure. The Trump candidacy was, in tone and profile, a Roger Stone production.
Yeah, I'm flattered, but I can't take credit. No, I think it is true that I first thought of the idea of Donald Trump as a candidate for president as early as 1988. And I was drawn to him as a potential candidate because of his independence created by his wealth. Independence in the sense that he was not deeply committed or responsible for the policies of the past. He had no investment in mistakes that had already been made. And what I saw is a growing two-party duopoly in which the two parties working together had gotten us endless war without our national inherent interests being clear, massive debt and spending and borrowing and no end in sight, immigration policies that cheated the people who were going through the system waiting in line and rewarded people who were in the country illegally, trade policies that we were promised would bring us jobs, but in fact sucked the jobs out of America, and a stagnant economy run by people who'd never run a business and didn't know how to. I thought all of those things could create a perfect storm in which a business person who has enormous courage and would be a total outsider could come to the fore and really change things.
How disappointed, what kind of sense of betrayal did you have when once the Trump bandwagon really started to roll in 2015, a bandwagon that you'd done so much to set on track, you were thrown overboard?
No, I would argue that with that interpretation, I most definitely resigned. I showed my letter of resignation to both the New York Times, Politico, and the Miami Herald the night before.
Well, if we take Trump's words at face value,
because no one breaks up with Trump, he breaks up with you, and there was no point in disparaging or disagreeing with him. I was too busy out campaigning for him. I probably did more television interviews on his behalf after I left the campaign than I did before.
I recall all of that. You were a very familiar figure, offering your total loyalty and support to Trump, even though you had left the official campaign.
But I'm a strategist, and a campaign cannot have two strategists, and there was no sense in my staying so that I could fight with him about things that, by the way, he turned out to be right about and I turned out to be wrong about. This is the first candidate for president in my experience of 10 national presidential campaigns who never took a poll, who never spent any money on, paid network campaign advertising or analytics or focus groups.
Are you still in contact with Donald Trump today?
From time to time.
You still offering him advice?
If he asks for it.
And does he?
Occasionally.
And does he take it?
Sometimes.
For example?
Well, I believe the president is entitled to a presumption of discretion if he is nice enough to make you a call and ask you what you think or tell you what he thinks. And therefore, it's been my policy since he's been elected not to discuss in detail what we might talk about. This is something where I think Bannon, for example, was extraordinarily indiscreet to the detriment of the president. I would never want to be in that position.
Well, you talk about Steve Bannon, who Trump now refers to as Sloppy Steve, but of course for so long regarded as his chief strategist and one of his most important advisors.
A self-appointed role, which is
well,
a dangerous
you
title.
Can call it what
yourself.
you like. Steve Bannon was very, very important to
Yes.
those key months in which Trump won the presidency. So Steve Bannon was a key figure. He went into the White House. But my point is this: Steve Bannon, General Michael Flynn, who was National Security Advisor, Anthony Scaramucci, Sean Spicer, Reince Priebus, Katie Walsh, as well as key figures outside the administration but so important to the government, James Comey, FBI Director, recently Andrew McCabe, FBI Deputy Director. All of these people are people who have either been fired or quit in the first year of the Trump White House. It looks like chaos.
No, I don't agree with that. First of all, some of them should have been fired much earlier. Others, I think, didn't serve the president well. Bannon blew himself up. He has only himself to blame. And I think General Flynn is a great patriot who was unfairly and incorrectly terminated.
Really?
Yes, indeed.
A man who lied about his meetings with the Russians?
No, he lied about making a call to set up a meeting with the Russians, an underlying action which is perfectly legal. He lied to an FBI agent, at least that's what he pled to.
Well, let's get to something which hangs like a very dark shadow over the whole of the Trump presidency, and that is the special counsel investigation into allegations of collusion during the election campaign between the Trump campaign and the Russians to interfere with and directly influence that election.
Yes, a fairy tale, a canard, a falsehood, meaningful coordination, conspiring, collusion with the Russians. There's never been any evidence of it produced either by the House or the Senate committee.
You speak with such confidence, you can't possibly know what Robert Mueller has discovered.
I think if we knew, we'd have read about it by now.
He hasn't finished his investigation.
He's got nothing. That's why
How
he's
do you
circled.
know?
I guarantee it. Let's wait and see. Where's the Russian collusion? Where are the indictments that relate to Russia? He processes indictments. He indicts Flynn for a process crime.
All we do know.
He indicts Manafort on crimes relating not to Russia, but to his campaign activity 15 years ago in Ukraine.
Yeah, Paul Manafort, of course, a very close friend of yours, now facing very serious charges.
None of them relating to Russian collusion.
But let's look at the Russia collusion facts. At least 12 Trump associates had contacts with the Russians during the campaign.
Contacts with the Russians are not legal, nor are they evidence of Russian collusion. Hillary Clinton's campaign had numerous connections with the Ukrainians.
That meeting in summer 2016 between a Russian lawyer with contacts to the Kremlin and Jared Kushner, one of Donald Trump's sons, a meeting which Donald Trump himself then oversaw a spinned message on, which was, it seems, factually incorrect.
The meeting is legal. The meeting produced nothing. But why was she in the country without a visa? Why would the Obama NSA and the FBI allow her to be in the country for such a meeting? And the evidence that she claims she had of malfeasance by Hillary Clinton is never produced because she doesn't have it. The meeting is a nothing burger. The meeting does not violate campaign finance law.
I've heard this phrase "nothing burger" before.
It's an American expression.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, it comes down to what you know and what I know about Robert Mueller's investigation. And the truth is, we do not know. But what we do...
I'm prepared to go on the record now. You can come back and re-interview me when it's revealed that he has nothing relating to Russian collusion. The president said it. I agree with him. It's a witch hunt.
Of course, it's not just about collusion, is it? It could be about obstruction of justice. We know that...
Now we're going to go back to the firing of Comey. Look, the deep-seated political establishment has tried to undo what they couldn't do at the ballot box last year repeatedly. First, there was the recount. That failed. The recount showed that Trump actually won Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania by a larger margin than expected. Then they wanted to brief the Electoral College on Russian collusion. Would have been the shortest briefing at that point in all time. There was no evidence then. There is no evidence now. Then there is this investigation. Well, Mr. Mueller's had a lot of time and a lot of money, yet I'm aware of no evidence of Russian conspiracy or collusion. Meetings do not constitute collusion. If so, Hillary Clinton was colluding with the Ukrainians.
There are people in Washington who are still looking very closely at your particular bit part in the allegations concerning hacking and Russia.
Yes.
Because it did seem for a time, as more and more detail was coming out about hacked information that was garnered from the Democratic Party, that you were getting a heads up from WikiLeaks about what was coming down the pipe.
Entirely false. Everything that I ever tweeted or wrote was because I was following the tweets of both WikiLeaks and Assange and reading his various interviews.
But
He
from time to
himself
time
has
you were
said
preempting them. For example, you seem to know that John Podesta was going to come into the firing line before it was issued in WikiLeaks.
Yes, because in January of 2016, I read all of the Panama Paper information about his business activities in Russia. You didn't have to have a heads up from WikiLeaks to realize that that was going to become an issue in the campaign. After the focus on Manafort, the focus on Podesta's business dealings in Russia was going to happen.
It is
but
odd,
I never said anywhere that WikiLeaks would publish his emails, because I didn't know that.
But it is odd that the Russians were hacking the Democratic Party.
We don't even know that. That's an assertion.
Oh, come on. The FBI, the CIA, all of the American intelligence community.
When the intelligence community say with a high degree of confidence it is our assessment, that means they don't know. No, I don't agree with that. The same people who told you Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy and he acted alone, which we now know on the basis of the recently released documents, is unlikely true.
Well, you can take your view of what's credible and I can take mine, but the fact is the Russians, according to every credible intelligence official in the United States, were hacking the Democratic Party. The information was being given to WikiLeaks.
Right. And as former counterintelligence
and you appeared
officials,
to be ahead of the game in knowing exactly what was going to come out. And as it happens, here in the UK right now, you made a point, I believe yesterday or the day before, of going to the Ecuadorian embassy to try to see Julian Assange. What was that all about?
Well, let's take these one by one. As William Binney and Ray McGovern, both former top counterintelligence agents, have said, there's more evidence that the DNC information was downloaded to a portable drive and taken out the back door. There really is no evidence that it was hacked.
You really don't trust your own government, do you?
Because they lie to us constantly. Secondarily, and The Nation magazine, hardly a right-wing organ, was the organization that published that study. Secondarily, Assange himself has said, Roger Stone never tweeted anything I hadn't already said in public, either in an interview or in a tweet. I spent 4 hours in front of the House Intelligence Committee, where I went voluntarily, and as I told them, and I say now, I know of no one who conspired with the Russians. I have no prior knowledge of the hacking of the DNC. I'm not even sure they were hacked. The reason I went by the Ecuadorian embassy, no, I did not ask for a meeting, that's incorrect. I dropped off a card, is because I don't believe that Julian Assange is a Russian asset. I believe he's a journalist. I do not believe that WikiLeaks is a Russian front. I think it is a news organization with a better reputation for accuracy than, say, the New York Times or the Washington Post.
Yeah, all right, hang on. Even as we speak, Donald Trump's war with the top echelons of the FBI, and indeed it seems with the most senior officials at the Justice Department, is continuing.
Absolutely, because we now have a memo.
This is dangerous territory.
It's not dangerous at all. Yes, the FBI and the CIA would not like to release a memo that will show that they used a fabricated dossier as the justification for surveillance by the state on the Republican candidate for president.
I guess you are giving
far worse than Watergate. Far worse than Watergate.
I tell you what, I guess you are giving me a very authentic view into the collective mind of the so-called alt-right.
No, not at all.
Because you don't trust for 1 second those put into the positions of highest authority in America's leading security and intelligence agencies. You clearly believe the FBI, the CIA, and I dare say every other intelligence agency are full of people who lie.
Who have been politicized, because those agencies have been entirely politicized.
They don't do what you and Donald Trump want them to do. Doesn't mean they're politicized.
No, sorry. The FBI and the CIA oppose the release of a memo that will demonstrate that they violated the law because they say it threatens national security. nonsensical.
The thing is, you have a very strong set of opinions about what's happening, and yet I come back to what I opened with, that you, in your political career, have always prided yourself in the power of disinformation. To quote Ted Cruz, a right-wing Republican, you have spent your entire career lying. So
Because everything I have said today will be borne out to be true, and you can come re-interview me when that happens. That's how confident I am that I'm correct.
Your record suggests that you're, from time to time, inclined to use language which deepens and expands the fractures in American society.
You mean like Hillary Clinton saying black people should be brought to heel, for example?
No, I mean like Roger Stone tweeting about Negroes, using the word beginning with B for women that he politically has disagreements
Well, let's take
with.
those down. I did refer to someone as a Negro. I also wrote an apology to that person in my column.
But why did you do it?
Who knows? Maybe I had
You
too
know
much
the
eating.
resonance of the word Negro. You know what it conjures up about segregation.
Actually, I don't think it's offensive, but because some black people I know do think so, I did apologize for that. As far as calling Ana Navarro a bitch, I stand by that. An abusive, nasty, limited, narrow-minded person.
You began this interview by worrying aloud about the polarization in America today, and then you use that kind of language in an interview?
We call it the First Amendment. You can say what you like.
You can call it what you like, but I guess what I'm getting to is this. Your politics, your style of politics, it is corroding and corrupting American political culture today.
I've done nothing in politics that isn't the norm. American politics is not beanbag. And our opponents have said things about us every bit as coarse as the things that we may have said. So I reject this idea that I have changed the culture.
See, I was positing earlier the idea that you may have influenced Donald Trump in some ways. When Donald Trump said what he said about immigrants who come from countries like Haiti, and said he wished that more immigrants could come from Norway and less from those S-hole countries like Haiti, when he reacted by the Charlottesville display of power by neo-Nazis by saying there were some fine people involved. How did you respond to what Trump said in those situations?
The president denies saying that. No Republican senator who was there can recall him saying
No,
that.
I think you'll find Lindsey Graham, who is a Republican, said that Dick Durbin's interpretation of what was said was right.
Well, perhaps Lindsey Graham is pandering for people back home. Look, I'm not going to criticize the president for saying what people think.
The United Nations Human Rights Council described it as racist.
The United Nations, they've accomplished a great deal.
You know, I guess it's this. Here you sit with me in the United Kingdom. You know that there are people around the world who've responded to things they've heard from Donald Trump and wonder whether the United States is led by a racist, and that doesn't seem to worry you.
What matters are deeds, not words. African American unemployment is at the lowest point in our history. Yeah, they called Richard Nixon a racist. He gave us affirmative action. He desegregated the American public schools without violence or bloodshed. What matters are deeds, not words.
When you look at what's happening today in the United States and you consider Trump as a man and as a president, how do you think this presidency is going to pan out?
It depends on whether he makes America great again. Our economy is already booming. In his State of the Union address, he talked about a plan to restore our inner cities, to restore Detroit. I'd like to do that. I also would like to see him follow through on his pledge to get us out of Afghanistan and out of Syria. I'm rather disappointed, frankly, that the generals have talked him into continuing, maybe even increasing our presence in both places. He ran as an anti-interventionist in the campaign. But 1 year does not a presidency make. And so far, I think he's doing extraordinarily well, given the intractable opposition of the two-party elites.
Roger Stone, we have to end there, but thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.
Happy to be here.